In the misty dawn of the 16th century, England was a small island kingdom, isolated, uncertain, and overshadowed by the mighty empires of Spain and Portugal. The world was changing fast. New continents had been discovered, oceans had become highways of ambition, and the age of exploration had begun. But England, still licking the wounds of internal strife and religious division, seemed unlikely to become a global power. Yet within a few generations, this modest island would rise to dominate the seas, redraw world maps, and influence every corner of the planet. The story of the British Empire begins not with grand armies or palaces, but with ships, fragile wooden vessels powered by wind, courage, and greed. It all started with trade. In 1600, a royal charter established the East India Company, giving a group of English merchants the power to explore, negotiate, and rule in the name of commerce. What began as a trading venture soon transformed into something far greater, a machine of conquest and control. The British learned quickly that power followed trade, and wherever their merchants went, their flags followed. The seas became England's battlefield. With naval victories such as the defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588, Britain proved that even a small nation could challenge giants. As the 17th century unfolded, British sailors, explorers, and privateers, part adventurers, part pirates, ventured across the Atlantic, establishing colonies in North America and the Caribbean. Each outpost, no matter how small, was a foothold in a growing empire. But it wasn't just about land. It was about dominance over routes, the veins of global commerce. By the early 18th century, British ports hummed with goods: sugar from the Caribbean, tobacco from Virginia, tea and spices from Asia. Wealth poured into London, transforming it from a medieval city into the beating heart of a modern empire. The British Crown, merchants, and navy became partners in a single ambition: to rule the seas and the markets. What began as exploration had turned into domination. But behind the glory and gold lay the dark truth: an empire built not just on trade, but on exploitation, slavery, and the ruthless pursuit of power. The dawn had come. The empire's sails had risen. But every empire that rises must one day face the weight of its own creation. By the 18th century, the British Empire had found its true strength: the Royal Navy. While other nations fought for land, Britain fought for the oceans. The empire's lifeblood flowed through its ships, connecting colonies thousands of miles apart, protecting trade routes that spanned the globe. Every plank of a British warship was a symbol of power. From the Caribbean to India, from Africa to the Pacific, the Union Jack fluttered on masts that seemed to pierce the horizon. The British had understood a simple truth: whoever controls the seas controls the world. Under figures like Admiral Horatio Nelson, the Navy became unstoppable. The Battle of Trafalgar, 1805, cemented Britain's supremacy, ending Napoleon's dream of invading England and ensuring that no rival fleet would challenge Britain for a century. But naval dominance was not just about war. It was about empire management. The Royal Navy guarded merchant convoys, suppressed piracy, and transported soldiers to distant colonies. While Europe's armies bled on the continent, Britain's empire expanded across oceans. The Caribbean became a plantation powerhouse. The East India Company tightened its grip on India. In Africa, forts and trading posts dotted the coasts, marking the first steps toward imperial conquest. But behind the polished brass and booming cannons, a silent war was being waged, a war of information, intelligence, and influence. British cartographers mapped the unknown. Missionaries carried the English language and religion to new lands, and the Navy's presence itself became a political message. Britain was everywhere, and resistance was futile. By the early 19th century, the British Empire had become the largest maritime power in human history. London wasn't just a city anymore. It was the command center of a global system. From the tea houses of Calcutta to the sugar mills of Jamaica, everything fed into one relentless network, the British trade machine. Yet with such vast control came an equally vast shadow. Slavery, economic exploitation, and the displacement of native peoples left deep scars that would last for centuries. The seas that carried wealth also carried suffering. By the mid-18th century, the British Empire's ambitions had turned east, toward a land of unimaginable wealth, color, and culture: India. For centuries, India had been the center of trade in spices, silk, and jewels. But for the British, it represented something even greater: the promise of dominance over an entire civilization. The East India Company, once a trading firm, had transformed into an imperial power. Its private armies fought wars, toppled rulers, and installed puppet kings. The turning point came in 1757 at the Battle of Plassey, when Robert Clive led the company's forces to victory against the Nawab of Bengal. That single battle marked the beginning of British rule in India, a rule that would last nearly 200 years. Under the company's control, India became the empire's greatest source of wealth and its greatest contradiction. British officials spoke of civilizing the natives while draining the land of its riches. Textile mills in Manchester thrived on cotton from India, while Indian weavers lost their livelihoods. Railways, telegraphs, and schools were built, not for the benefit of Indians, but to tighten imperial control. By the mid-19th century, resentment boiled into rebellion. In 1857, Indian soldiers, known as sepoys, rose against their British masters. The revolt was crushed with brutal force, but it changed everything. The East India Company was dissolved, and Queen Victoria herself took direct control of India. The subcontinent was declared the jewel in the crown of the British Empire, the brightest, most valuable possession in a global dominion. For Britain, India was not just a colony, it was the beating heart of imperial pride. But beneath the grand parades and royal proclamations, millions of Indians lived under oppression, famine, and foreign rule. The jewel shone brightly, but it was stained with blood. While the empire expanded overseas, another revolution was transforming Britain itself: the Industrial Revolution. Factories, steam engines, and railways turned the once rural nation into the world's workshop. Coal fired the furnaces of progress, and iron forged the bones of empire. Industrial power made Britain unstoppable. Its goods, textiles, machinery, weapons, flooded global markets. The empire became a vast network of production and supply. Colonies provided raw materials, and Britain manufactured finished goods to sell back to them. This economic cycle made London the financial capital of the world. Steamships replaced sailboats, telegraph cables connected continents, and railroads stitched colonies together. The British Empire was no longer just a collection of territories. It was an industrial organism, pulsing with commerce, communication, and control. But industrialization had its price. The working class in Britain toiled in harsh conditions, and across the empire, resources were stripped to feed the machines of progress. Still, for Victorians, this era represented destiny, proof that Britain was chosen to lead the world into modernity. Art, science, and literature flourished. Explorers mapped Africa's interior. Engineers built canals and bridges on every continent. The empire became not only a force of arms, but a force of ideas, spreading its language, technology, and culture. Yet, beneath the pride of progress lay arrogance. The British saw themselves as bringers of civilization, blind to the exploitation their civilizing mission imposed. The age of industry was also the age of illusion, a golden mask covering the cracks of greed. At its height during the reign of Queen Victoria, the British Empire controlled 1/4 of the world's land and population. It was said that the sun never sets on the British Empire, and indeed, from Canada to Australia, from Africa to Asia, the Union Jack flew under every sky. London became the heart of an empire that spanned the globe. The Great Exhibition of 1851 showcased Britain's industrial and imperial might, displaying treasures and technologies from every corner of the empire. The Victorians believed they had achieved a divine mission, to bring progress and order to the world. But empire was not just built on trade or technology. It was enforced through military power and a complex web of alliances, administrators, and missionaries. In Africa, British explorers like Livingstone and Rhodes paved the way for colonization. In Asia, British diplomats manipulated local rulers. In the Pacific, small islands became strategic stepping stones for global dominance. Victorian society glorified the empire. It was taught in schools, sung in anthems, and celebrated in every newspaper. Yet, in the colonies, stories of rebellion and resistance simmered. The cost of maintaining the empire grew heavier, not only in gold, but in conscience. The Victorian age was an era of confidence and denial. It was the empire's zenith, its brightest light before the shadows began to fall. No empire lasts forever. By the late 19th century, the winds of rebellion were rising across the colonies. In India, intellectuals began demanding self-rule. In Ireland, nationalist movements gained strength. In Africa and Asia, voices of resistance grew louder. The empire's confidence was cracking. While Britain believed it was bringing order, its subjects saw injustice. The concept of freedom, once Britain's proudest export, returned as a weapon against imperial rule. In 1919, the Amritsar massacre in India shocked the world, exposing the brutality behind British control. Gandhi's philosophy of nonviolence turned moral strength into political power. Across the empire, colonies began to dream of independence. Even within Britain, doubts grew. Writers and thinkers questioned whether the empire had betrayed its own ideals. The world was changing. Nationalism was spreading, and the age of empires was fading. The winds of change, as they were later called, were not mere breezes. They were storms that would shake the empire to its core. The 20th century brought catastrophe. World War I and World War II drained Britain's strength, money, and morale. Millions of soldiers from across the empire fought and died under the British flag. Indians, Africans, Canadians, Australians, united in war, but not in equality. The wars revealed the empire's dependence on its colonies. Yet after the guns fell silent, those same colonies began to ask, if we could die for Britain, why can't we live free from it? The empire began to fracture. Ireland gained independence. The Middle East became a web of new nations. After World War II, the world order shifted, and the United States and Soviet Union rose as new powers. Britain's empire, once unchallenged, was now aging and exhausted. The 1947 independence of India marked the beginning of the end. The jewel in the crown was gone, and one by one the rest would follow. By the mid-20th century, the British Empire, once the largest in history, was dissolving into memory. From Africa to the Caribbean, from Asia to the Pacific, nations gained independence, reclaiming their identity and future. In 1956, the Suez Crisis exposed Britain's weakness to the world. The age of empire was over, yet Britain sought to reinvent itself, no longer a ruler of nations, but a member of a new community, the Commonwealth, a voluntary association of former colonies bound by shared history. The Union Jack was lowered in colony after colony, often amid tears, pride, and relief. The empire's sun was setting, not in defeat, but in transformation. The legacy it left behind was complex. Democracy and law in some places, division and pain in others. Today, the story of the British Empire remains one of power and paradox, a tale of exploration and exploitation, innovation and injustice. Its echoes shape our modern world, in language, politics, and culture. As the final light of empire fades, one truth remains. Every empire, no matter how vast, is but a chapter in history, and history never forgets.